Next, I'll invite Vikas to talk about the smart metering rollout, smart metering technology and the smart metering.
Will we switch? Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to come and share with you our first experiences of implementing smart metering and smart grid projects in India, and some of the learnings that we have got from there. It's still early days, and it's still development phase, I would say, because any smart metering or smart grid project rolled out in large numbers anywhere in the world has gone through the same process of engagement, piloting, understanding technologies, and then the big rollouts follow. But this is perhaps an area which is a bit more painful, sometimes a bit more convoluted, but a very necessary part of actually identifying what are we trying to achieve by this process. Just before I dive into what projects we are undertaking and what's happening there, I just want to put in context the background of Cyan Technology as a company, and what are we trying to do here. Cyan Technology is an offshoot of Cambridge Consultants, the Cambridge University, and there a lot of money and a lot of effort is spent into development of technologies. And once those technologies become commercially viable, they are offloaded as companies, and then commercial organizations take them on and work on them. We, having spent a few years on technology development, and I'm talking about essentially the last mile communication, wireless RF mesh technology with a cloud-based platform behind it to provide the applications that smart grid and smart metering is asking for. And what we are trying to do around that is to try and engage a lot of emerging markets, and I'm talking about India, Brazil, China, South Africa, where we are engaged in a number of these projects, and I will talk you through some of these. Essentially, this diagram would show what and how we connect any of the field devices, and these could be meters, these could be in-home displays, it could be load curtailment devices, and the other side are the IT applications, which over the years, and in India, for example, RAP-DRP has allowed utilities to develop a number of IT applications. How do we, in an increasingly connected world, connect these two very, very disparate systems or products, if I can call that? So, what is our mission here? What are we trying to do here is, on one side, the utility providers have problems about identifying losses, identifying waste in the network, and to reduce the cost of service to the customers. And this does not necessarily just include the cost at which the electricity or gas is supplied, but it's about the entire service package that comes along with it, whether it's the cost of meter reading, billing, call outs, call centers, everything around it. Equally, how can we empower the consumers, the people who are actually paying for this service? How can we give them the tools to manage what they want to spend, how much they want to spend, when they want to spend? So again, to summarize, in terms of the applications or the real needs that we're trying to service for the network service provider is the demand side management, the gap between what is available on the grid and what the consumers want. Grid optimization, debt resolution, and I will go into some of these with specific examples on how this is being implemented. And maybe then you will be able to correlate it back to what you're doing today and how this is going to pan out in the next few years. Similarly, in terms of the consumer, what flexibility are we giving them? Today, for example, an electricity utility will send you a bill at the end of 2 months. You look at it, some of us at home, will jump up and down saying, oh, it's too much. Why did it happen? We have no means of finding out when it happened, how it happened. We will be careful for a few days. We might have a few shouting bouts in the house, but after that 3 days, it's forgotten till the next bill turns up. So how do we make sure that today, with this interconnected world, where we are very, very comfortable with most of us using smartphones, apps, getting information at a click of a button, why can't we get this information and manage it? And that's what we are trying to address here. This is another slide talking about the various things that are that the utility and the consumers would benefit from. And these are about network insight, identification of theft, revenue assurance, and demand response, primarily on the utility side. And on the consumer benefits, it's about pay when you can, adaptive pricing, and also the flexibility of paying for those services. The three good use cases which are now fairly well established are smart metering leading on to smart grids, and smart lighting, which is an energy efficiency measure, essentially the street lighting application I'm talking about here. And some of these applications are then leading on to what smart cities would be like. So this is, again, the value proposition that we have about connecting the end devices in the homes, in the streets, to your IT networks. There are three projects that I'd like to talk about, which we are currently executing here. One, we have just finished for Tata Power Mumbai, and this is a smart metering project. Another one that we are currently executing is for Mysore city. It's a smart grid project. And another project I'd like to talk about is a smart street lighting project. The Tata Power project is about, you've got meters in the homes, in the industry, in the commercial establishments. Most of us don't even know where that meter exists. Even if we know where that meter exists, we only see a kWh, or if some people would like to say, these are the number of units that the meter has recorded. We have no real idea what is the consumption or cost of we have incurred in the last few days, months, years, unless we are very meticulous, looking through lots and lots of bills and transactions. So if, and this is where you got to understand, think about, if you had this information being compiled and available to you at a click of a button, and for you to then manage and decide, this is the wastage I'd like to manage, this is how I'd like to pay, this is what my estimated bills are, and that's how I'd like to deal with. And this is the thought behind this project. And Tata Power Mumbai, and we, along with some of our ecosystem partners, then brought in this communication technology which allows meters to send their data to the utility every hour. That data is pushed into the CRM systems, the billing systems, etc., but very importantly, onto a consumer portal. The consumers are given a login to see what they're doing. They can compare what their consumptions currently are with, say, the previous month, the previous year, as the data builds up, what is their estimated bills. And in the next stage of engagement, Tata Power is going to provide this in the next few months that they've already announced, is this same thing in the form of apps. And possibly from there, also the ability to straight away pay for your bills. Think of how many of us in our busy lives would like to take time off and go and settle a bill. Yes, utilities, some of them allow us to do these things online, but what if a bill is not right? What if the meter reader came and we did not allow him in because we weren't at home? And therefore, all those disputes would tend to go away and this greater service would be available. Equally, think of another scenario. If you lost power at home, and before you could pick up a phone to complain to the utility, they already knew about it and were doing something about it. And this system allows them to do this, exactly this. So it's also about greater customer engagement. It's about giving better services. And to put this in context, Mumbai is the only city in India where consumers have a choice between two retailers. And there is this thing about creating that loyalty with customers. So this is one of the methods Tata Power thought that they would use to kind of win that customer loyalty and provide that additional service around it. The next project I'd like to talk about is India's first smart grid project that was awarded for Mysore city under the Ministry of Power pilots. This is still a pilot. It is about testing technologies. It's about testing the concepts that were laid behind it. I'll just pick up on a couple of concepts here. One is about rolling blackouts that we currently refer to as load shedding. If we could do away with these completely and think of a brownout situation where, for example, today when we have load shedding, we fall back on an inverter at home or a DG set. But if we did not need that and yet never lost our supply, how would that be to all of us? This project, amongst the various other applications, talks about a concept where if the utility is faced with a crunch of shortage of supply, it informs the customer both on the meter and through the phone messaging to say, half an hour from now, there will be, say, a 10% shortage. Could you please switch off an air conditioner or something in your homes? If you do, after that half an hour, everything carries on. That air conditioner is off for maybe half an hour or an hour, depending on what is the period of shortage. In case you do not comply, then only you, particular consumer, loses your power. But the moment you comply with it again, within 5 minutes, you will get reconnected back and you can carry on. That means you will not need any power backup at home, and yet nobody should have a load shedding. Now this is a brilliant concept, but it also requires a huge amount of customer engagement for them to understand how this technology is going to help them and how to respond to that technology when the signals are sent out to them. I'll take another application here, which may actually sound the right thing for some of you, is about payment and budgeting. Many of us, and I think the numbers excess of 80% in India on mobile phones, where people are on pay-as-you-go. That means they decide how much I'm going to pay and when. And that's how they manage their budgeting. So this application would give you not only the units that you're consuming, it also tells you in rupees what's your balance. So you can decide to pay when you like, how much you like. You can get a top-up over a phone or an app, and that should be it. You should not even be waiting for a bill at the end of the month. Yeah, I'll now like to just talk about the smart lighting scenario. Over many years, we've had many lighting technologies, right from high vapor sodiums to tube lights to halogens to LEDs. They're getting more and more efficient. We are already, if we move from high vapor sodium down to LEDs, saving about 60% of energy. But if we had controls on top of that, and if we could manage this better through cloud and communication technologies, we could save a further 25% of energy on top, in addition to managing and finding out what's not working out there And you could do that sitting in your office without having to travel out. And some of these projects that we've just implemented, about 50,000 streetlights, both in Brazil and China, and we are starting some pilots in India as well, has brought these advantages to the utilities, which ultimately will flow back to the consumers. In terms of our smart cities vision, these utility applications are very, very important and are obvious and are some very profoundly available to us. And if these can be combined and new use cases as they come up can be brought onto the same infrastructure that we are creating, that's where smart cities would begin to develop. Smart cities and smart grids is not about a product, it's about solutions, but it is also a journey. It's also something we're all finding out and discovering what our needs are and how we need to administer it. Just to conclude, reflecting on the projects that we have already undertaken in India, there are some things that we'd like to highlight and hopefully leave it for the policymakers here to take back and try and address as we go into bigger rollouts. One is about engagement of stakeholders, and two categories of stakeholders being very, very important here. One is, for example, the project team in the utility who's been tasked with this implementation, and the other one being the consumers. How do they fully understand what are the objectives and what are the pass-fail criteria for the pilots that we're doing? Till they understand this, technology for the sake of technology is no good. Unless there are tangible benefits to the consumers, this would probably not be accepted in very large numbers. The second thing is about industry readiness. Smart metering and the new standards that Reggie mentioned. We still believe there is a gap between what the equipment manufacturers, technology suppliers have got ready and what the government and the various authorities want on the ground. The readiness of these equipment suppliers still leaves a lot to be desired. They're still far away from rolling out anything big. They're still waiting to understand, is this the final specification? Is this the final solution that we got to cater to? They're still waiting to finalize if that's what they need to do. They don't want to do it over and over again. And look at all the big smart meter, smart grid rollouts in the world, whether it was Australia, UK, France. Everybody went through this process of piloting, reviewing the specifications, coming up with a final specifications before a large number of manufacturers got in. And I don't think India will be very different from that. Equally, we need to lay out a roadmap, and this is very important from the developers' viewpoint to say, when we invest in this technology, when we provide you the products and solutions you're looking for, what can we expect? What is the business on the table? What are we trying to do here? And those are very, very important things from that perspective. I will just conclude here and say this is a journey which has just begun, and there are some issues still to be looked at. For example, whose data is this we're talking about? The data that's coming from smart meters and grid? Who's allowed to handle it? Is there enough security in this whole solution that we're talking about? Because looking at people who've looked at it and debated this have said, looking at the utility data, for example, you can find out when people are in the home, they're outside the home. Can somebody get into your house and do something? These are very important issues to address. Equally, because we are talking of smart meters, etc., to have switches in them. What is the cyber security to say nobody will switch off 100,000 customers or black out a complete city, and etc. We live in a world where terrorism is a reality. Have we taken enough steps to make sure that doesn't happen here? I leave that as a thought. Thank you very much.